Alara walked through the streets of the city, her coat pulled tightly around her as the wind howled through narrow alleys. The city was alive with lights and distant laughter, but to her it felt cold and empty. She had been cast out of her pack, rejected for a mistake she did not commit. Every glance felt like judgment, every whisper like a blade against her heart. She hated being seen as weak, yet exhaustion weighed her down. Her steps echoed against the stone walls as she wandered, unsure where she was heading. Somewhere far from the pain and whispers. She longed for safety. The charity gala she stumbled into seemed unreal. A glittering palace of light, chandeliers hanging like captured stars. The air was warm, filled with the perfume of wealth and whispered power. Alara had no invitation, yet curiosity and desperation had led her here. She slipped through the grand doors, unnoticed among the crowd of alphas in sharp suits and omegas in flowing dresses. Her gaze fell on him before she knew she was looking. Darian. The name alone carried weight. He was a man whose presence seemed to command the room without a word. A billionaire alpha with rumors swirling around him like shadows. He was cold, calculating, untouchable. Yet there was something in his sharp gaze that made her chest tighten. Alara tried to avoid his eyes, but fate seemed to push them together. A collision of destiny. She backed up, bumping into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne, spilling a glass. Hearts raced and whispers circled. Darian's eyes found her, piercing through the crowd, and something unspoken passed between them. "You need to be more careful," he said, his voice low but firm, not cruel but commanding like a storm waiting to break. I'm sorry," Alara stammered, unsure why her voice trembled. "You're far from home, aren't you?" His question was simple, but it held weight, as if he could see the truth behind her tired eyes. Alara hesitated. Most would dismiss her. Most would mock. But something in his gaze was different. It was neither pity nor curiosity, it was recognition. A recognition of someone who had been pushed aside, someone who had been hurt. Before she could answer, the gala swallowed her attention. Music and chatter filled the space, laughter ringing like bells. Her feet felt heavy. She had not eaten, not slept properly in days. The glittering room spun around her, a dizzying world of masks and whispered promises. And then her legs gave out. Darian was there before she hit the floor. One hand steadied her shoulder, the other gently supporting her back. "You're exhausted," he said, noting the dark shadows under her eyes, the tension in her posture. I'm fine," she murmured, but the lie fell flat even to her own ears. "You're not." His voice softened slightly, almost unnoticeable, but it carried warmth, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Without thinking, she leaned against him. Her head found his shoulder, a desperate, instinctive act of comfort. For a moment, time stopped. The gala, the crowd, the whispers, they all faded. It was just them. Two souls briefly touching in a world that demanded masks. Alara closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his presence seep into her. She felt safe, even if only for a few heartbeats. And sleep claimed her. Darian stood frozen, not wanting to move, not wanting to shatter the fragile moment. He had never allowed anyone this close, not for years. Yet here was an Omega, rejected and fragile, trusting him enough to rest on his shoulder. Something inside him shifted, something long buried under wealth, power, and solitude. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was irrelevant. When Alara stirred awake, the room had emptied. The music had softened to a hum, and the early hints of dawn glimmered against the windows. She blinked, dazed, and realized Darian was gone. Panic rose for a moment, but then her hand brushed against something in her coat pocket. A note elegantly folded, sealed with a simple wax stamp bearing an unfamiliar crest. She opened it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was precise, almost regal. "You are not what they told you. Come if you dare." The truth waits, no signature, no explanation. Just words that made her pulse quicken and her mind spin. Alara's curiosity battled her caution. She had been warned all her life to trust no one, to hide weakness. And yet the note felt like a lifeline, a key to a world she had been shut out from, a world where she might finally belong, or at least understand why she had been rejected. The gala faded behind her as she followed the subtle trail the note suggested. It led her through the quieter streets, winding alleys, and finally to a building that seemed older than the city itself. Its walls were stone covered with ivy, with windows dark and silent. A fortress hidden in plain sight. She paused, heart hammering, and pressed her hand against the door. A chill ran through her as she pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of aged wood and faint incense, a mixture of wealth and secrecy. Her footsteps echoed softly as she moved through the grand hall. Every corner whispered power. Every shadow seemed alive. And then she saw him again, standing at the top of a sweeping staircase. Darian. His gaze was fixed on her, unreadable, but intense. "You came," he said simply. No surprise, no question, just acknowledgement. I don't even know what this is," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't matter," he replied. "What matters is that you are here, that you are awake to the truth waiting for you." Alara took a cautious step forward. "What truth?" Darian's expression softened just slightly, a flicker of something human, something real, that nothing is as it seems. "Not your rejection, not my control, and certainly not the world you think you know." Her pulse quickened. The walls she had built around herself trembled at the edge of collapse. She wanted to retreat, to run back to the life she thought she had lost, but something deeper inside urged her forward. Something told her that this alpha, this man who seemed untouchable, might hold the key to her past, her power, and perhaps her heart. Darian descended the stairs, each step deliberate. "You have questions," he said, "and I have answers. But answers come with a price. Are you ready to pay it?" Alara hesitated, then nodded. Somehow she knew she had no choice. The world that had rejected her was small, cold, and cruel. Whatever lay ahead in this mysterious place, at least it offered the possibility of truth, and perhaps a chance to reclaim herself. As she followed him into a dimly lit hallway, the first hints of sunlight broke over the horizon, painting the room in shades of gold and shadow. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of hope, but a flicker of unease lingered in the back of her mind. The note, the mysterious building, Darian's unreadable expression. Something told her that this was only the beginning, and that the secret waiting for her would change everything she thought she knew about herself, about him and about the world they were about to navigate together. And so, as Alara stepped further into the unknown, the city outside waking to another ordinary day, she could not have imagined what the dawn would reveal. Cliffhanger. Alara is inside Darian's mysterious estate, following him into the unknown, knowing a secret waits for her that could change everything. The audience is left wondering, what is the secret? And why did Darian bring her here? Alara's footsteps echoed softly on the polished floors of Darian's estate. The hallways were wide and tall, lined with portraits of ancestors who stared down at her with quiet judgment. Each painting seemed to whisper of power, of wealth, and of secrets long buried. Her eyes were wide with both awe and unease. She had never seen a place like this. An ancient fortress hidden within the heart of the city, full of shadows and whispers. Darian moved ahead of her, silent and confident, his presence commanding the space. He didn't look back or invite her with words, yet somehow she followed without hesitation. There was something magnetic about him, a gravity that pulled her in despite every warning she had learned in life. "This way," he finally said, stopping before a heavy wooden door. His fingers brushed the handle, and the room beyond glowed faintly with golden light. "Everything you need to know is here. But first you must understand something. What you think you know about your world, about yourself, is incomplete." Alara's heart pounded. "Incomplete? How?" He gestured for her to step inside. The room was lined with shelves filled with books bound in leather and gold. Scrolls rested on stands, and strange objects, small, metallic, and glowing faintly, were scattered around. It was a library, but unlike any she had seen before. Ancient knowledge whispered from every corner. "Your rejection," Darian began, his voice low, "was not an accident. There are forces at work you do not yet understand, forces tied to your blood, your very nature as an Omega, and it connects to me." Alara's breath caught. She had expected many things tonight. Shame, humiliation, perhaps another cold dismissal. But never this. "Connected to you? How?" Darian's gaze softened, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his usual stoic mask. "I am cursed, Alara. Not in the way you think of curses, no dark magic from a witch or demon, but in a way that affects everyone close to me. My bond with another, it awakens powers that can destroy or protect, and your presence awakens something in me I cannot control." Ilara stepped back, startled. I don't understand." "You will," he said simply. "But first you need to see the truth." He moved to a large globe in the center of the room, its surface etched with strange symbols that pulsed faintly under his touch. A panel opened, revealing a hidden compartment. From it he drew an object wrapped in velvet. Carefully he placed it on the table. It was small, a pendant of black stone set in silver. When Ilara touched it, a warmth spread through her fingers and suddenly visions flashed behind her eyes. She saw herself as a child, alone and frightened, rejected by her pack. She saw shadows moving around her family, unseen and calculating. And then she saw Darian. Not as the billionaire she knew, but as a younger man, alone, burdened, trying to protect something he barely understood. She gasped and pulled back. What is this?" "A key," he said, "to understanding why our paths have crossed. You have a role, Ilara, a purpose, and it begins with trust." Trust, the word felt heavy. She had been betrayed so many times that the very idea seemed impossible. Yet looking at him, seeing the careful way he handled the pendant, the quiet pain in his eyes, she felt something shift inside her, something fragile and hopeful. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why would you care about someone like me?" Darian's expression darkened almost imperceptibly. "Because you are the only one who can change what is coming. Because unlike others, you have not been tainted by greed or fear. You have been tested by rejection, and that gives you strength. Strength most cannot see." Ilara's chest tightened. His words were heavy with meaning, and yet they offered a strange comfort. She wanted to believe him, even as fear whispered that trusting him might be dangerous. They spent hours in the library, Darian showing her books and artifacts, explaining the curse tied to his family, the powers that surged when alphas and omegas bonded, and the prophecy that hinted at someone like her entering his life. Ilara absorbed everything, her mind racing, her heart struggling to keep pace with the strange mix of fear and fascination. At one point, Darian moved closer, examining a manuscript. "You have a gift," he said softly. "You feel things deeply. You sense power even when it hides. That is rare among omegas, and it makes you important." Ilara looked down, unsure how to respond. Compliments felt strange, almost threatening. But the way he said it, without arrogance, without expectation, made her heart ache with longing she didn't fully understand. Hours passed like minutes. The golden light of dawn began to filter through the windows, casting long shadows across the room. Ilara, exhausted from both the journey and the revelations, sank into a chair, letting herself rest briefly. Darian watched her, silent, his expression unreadable. "Rest," he said finally, his voice gentle but firm. "You need it. Tomorrow we begin the real work. But tonight, let it be enough to breathe." Ilara closed her eyes, letting the quiet envelop her. For the first time in months, she felt a fragile sense of safety. She trusted him even just a little, and it terrified her. When she woke, Darian was gone. The room was empty, and the pendant rested on the table, glowing faintly. She reached for it instinctively, and a sudden pulse of warmth ran through her. A memory, not hers, flashed in her mind. She saw a dark figure moving through her past, manipulating events, ensuring her rejection. She saw Darian, younger, fighting unseen forces alone, burdened with secrets and pain. And then a shadow of danger loomed, an approaching threat that seemed to recognize her as key and him as protector. Ilara's heart raced. She had thought the night's revelations were the end of surprises, but the vision left her with more questions than answers. What was coming for them? Who was manipulating their fates? And why did it feel as though her life and Darian's were bound together by threads she could not see? Footsteps on the stairs made her jump. Darian appeared calm as ever, yet there was a tension in his eyes. "You saw it," he said. "The visions." "Yes," Ilara whispered, clutching the pendant. "But I don't understand any of it." "Why me? Why now?" "Because the world is not kind to those who are weak," he said. "And you are not weak, Ilara, not really. But the people who would use us, they will not wait. You need to be ready, and so do I." Her chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth in his voice left her silent. She nodded, accepting her place in this strange, dangerous world, even as fear prickled at the edges of her mind. For the first time, she realized something important. Her rejection had not been an end. It had been a beginning, and Darian, the man who seemed untouchable, cold, and impossible, was the first person who had truly seen her, accepted her, and given her purpose. They spent the rest of the morning in quiet preparation. Darian taught her how to sense the subtle currents of energy that surrounded the city, how to recognize threats before they arrived, and how to trust her instincts. Every lesson was a challenge, but also a bond, a thread weaving them closer together. And yet, even as they worked, the question lingered. Why had Darian chosen her? What had he seen in her that others could not? The answers were hidden, waiting in the shadows of the estate, in the secrets he had not yet shared. By midday, the sun was high, casting golden rays through the tall windows. Ilara stood at the edge of the library, gazing at the city below. For the first time in months, she felt something she had not felt before: hope, fragile but real. Darian joined her, his presence silent but comforting. "Soon," he said, his voice low, "you will understand why you were brought here, why you were rejected, why you were chosen, and why your fate is tied to mine. But for now, breathe, trust me, even if only a little." Ilara nodded, feeling the truth in his words, though uncertainty lingered. She had no choice but to trust him, and somehow, that trust felt like the first step toward reclaiming not only her power but her heart. And as they stood together, looking out at the city that had once felt cold and cruel, she realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Cliffhanger. Ilara has learned about Darian's curse and her own connection to him, but a vision of a looming threat hints that their lives are in danger. She must navigate this dangerous bond while uncovering the truth behind her rejection, and the audience is left wondering what the approaching danger will be and how it will test both her and Darian. The day after Ilara's first night in Darian's estate, the sun shone weakly through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the library. Ilara moved quietly, her thoughts still spinning from everything she had learned. The pendant rested in her hand, its warmth pulsing like a heartbeat. She had glimpsed visions of her past and of Darian's burdened life. She understood now that she was not merely a guest in his world. She was entwined in a destiny that neither of them could ignore. Darian entered the library without warning, his footsteps silent, yet impossible to ignore. He had been observing her since dawn, as if studying her every motion. His face was calm, but there was a tension behind his eyes that betrayed the weight of what he carried. "You're restless," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. Ilara swallowed. I don't know what to do. I feel like my whole life has been leading to this moment, but I don't understand why." Darian's expression softened. "Because you were meant to find me, Ilara, and because I was meant to find you. Our fates were never separate." She looked at him, seeing for the first time the man behind the empire, the alpha behind the legend. Vulnerability flickered across his features, brief but undeniable. "But the curse," she whispered. "You said it's dangerous being near you. What if I can't handle it?" Darian shook his head slowly. "It's not about handling it. It's about choice. You can reject it, but that will not change what is coming. You have a gift, Ilara. You have strength that no one else has. And I need you to trust me, even if only a little." The words settled over her like a cloak. Trust. She had been rejected so many times that the word felt foreign, almost dangerous. Yet, standing there, with him, she felt a spark of something she had not felt in years: hope. Before she could respond, a sudden movement in the corner of the room made her jump. Darian's hand was on her shoulder in an instant, firm and protective. A shadow shifted near the bookshelves, unnatural in its silence. "Not here," he murmured, his eyes narrowing. "Someone is watching." Ilara's pulse quickened. "Who?" Darian's jaw tightened. "I don't know yet, but they are close. Too close." He moved to the pendant on the table and placed it around Ilara's neck. The warmth spread through her chest, steadying her nerves. "It will protect you, but you must remain alert. Danger is coming, and it will test everything you know about yourself and about me." Ilara swallowed hard. I trust you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Darian's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. That is all I need for now. For the next few hours, Darian taught her how to sense the subtle currents of energy that flowed through the estate and the city beyond. He showed her how to notice the faintest disturbances, how to recognize when someone or something approached with ill intent. Ilara absorbed the lessons eagerly, her body tense but her mind sharp. Every movement she made, every breath she took, was measured. She could feel herself growing stronger, more aware, more connected to a world she had never understood before. By evening, her exhaustion returned, but this time it was different. It was not the fatigue of fear or rejection. It was the fatigue of growth. Darian watched her quietly as she stretched out on a chaise, her head resting on the soft fabric. She closed her eyes, letting herself relax for the first time in days, and once again sleep claimed her. This time Darian did not move away. He remained near her, his eyes scanning the room, alert to every sound and shadow. For hours he watched, guarding her with a vigilance born of both instinct and something deeper, something he had long denied himself, the desire to protect, to care, to be close. When Ilara awoke, the room was dark, except for the faint glow of the pendant against her chest. She sat up, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from the memory of a dream. In it, she had seen Darian, younger, struggling against a force she could not understand. She had seen herself, running through shadows, her steps guided by hands she could not see. And then, a figure cloaked in darkness loomed before her, whispering words she could not hear, but felt in her bones. Darian entered the room silently, his presence grounding her. "The visions?" he asked. "Yes," she said, clutching the pendant. They feel real. Too real. And there's someone coming. I can feel it." He nodded. "You are correct. Someone is approaching who knows about the curse. They know about the bond forming between us, and they will not stop until they have what they want." Ilara's chest tightened. "What do they want?" "Power," he said simply. "Control. They see our connection as a threat to their plans, and they will not hesitate to destroy anyone who stands in their way." Fear rose, sharp and cold. Yet beneath it, a different feeling stirred, determination. She had been rejected, cast aside, and told she was powerless. Now she realized that she was neither. She was part of something larger, something important, and she would not run from it. Darian studied her closely, as if measuring her resolve. "You have grown stronger already," he said. "Stronger than you realize, and that is why I need you to trust me completely. The bond we share is not simple. It is not easy, but it can give us strength if we allow it." Ilara hesitated, then nodded. "I trust you," she said again. This time her voice was steadier, firmer. "I will face this, whatever it is, with you." For the first time, a faint smile touched Darian's lips. "Good. That is all I could hope for." Their bond deepened over the following days. They trained together, moving through the estate in silence and focus. Darian guided her in ways that were both physical and mental, teaching her to sense danger, to read the subtle shifts in energy, to control her own emerging abilities. Each lesson brought them closer, weaving threads of trust and reliance between them. And yet, the more they worked together, the more Ilara sensed the hidden tension beneath Darian's calm exterior. There were moments when his gaze lingered too long, moments when his expression faltered, revealing glimpses of pain he did not voice. She wanted to ask, to understand, but the right words always seemed to slip away, replaced by the weight of unspoken truths. One evening, as they watched the sun dip below the city skyline, Darian spoke softly. "There is a cost to what we are doing, Ilara. The closer we become, the more dangerous it gets, not just to us, but to everyone around us. The bond we share, it awakens forces that cannot be controlled easily." Ilara turned to him, meeting his gaze. "I understand, but I also know I am stronger than I was before, and I am not afraid to face it." Darian studied her, his expression unreadable. Courage is not the absence of fear, he said finally. It is the willingness to act despite it. And you have it, more than you realize. They stood together in silence as the last light of day faded. The city below seemed peaceful, unaware of the dangers creeping ever closer. And yet both of them knew that peace was fleeting, fragile, and temporary. Suddenly, a distant noise reached Alara's ears, a soft, almost imperceptible shift in the air. She froze, her instincts sharpening. Darian's hand was on hers in an instant, guiding her into the shadows. They are here, he whispered. The ones who watch us. The ones who wait for the right moment. We must be ready. Ilara's pulse quickened, but she did not move away. She had learned to trust him, to rely on him. And in that trust she found a strength she had never known before. The night stretched on. Quiet, yet tense. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper of wind a potential threat. And as they waited, together, their hands brushing occasionally, their breath synchronized, Ilara realized something profound. The bond they shared was not just about survival. It was about trust, about courage, about accepting each other's vulnerabilities and fears. And in that quiet, dangerous night, a new understanding formed between them, a promise, unspoken but undeniable, that whatever came, they would face it together. But even as they prepared, a shadow moved outside the estate. Hidden eyes watched. The forces that sought to exploit their bond were closer than ever, and their arrival would test everything Ilara and Darian had learned, and everything their hearts had begun to feel. Cliffhanger. A shadowy threat approaches the estate, watching Ilara and Darian. Their bond has strengthened, but danger looms, and the audience is left wondering who the observers are and what their intentions will be. The estate was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. Ilara stood at the window of the grand hall, her eyes tracing the city below. The street seemed peaceful, bathed in the glow of the afternoon sun, but she knew better. Danger was closer than it appeared, moving silently like a shadow she could not see. Darian entered the room, his steps measured, his eyes dark with concern. "They are closer," he said softly. "The ones who watch us, who wait for the right moment, they have made their move." Ilara turned to him, clutching the pendant at her chest. "What do they want?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her stomach. "Power," he said simply. "They want what we share. The bond, the connection between Alpha and Omega. They see it as a threat to their control, and they will not stop until they have it." Ilara swallowed. The bond they had formed had grown strong, deep, unspoken but undeniable. Every touch, every glance, every shared moment had tied them together in ways that went beyond words. And now that very bond was being tested. Darian approached her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You must be ready," he said. "Not just for what is coming, but for the truth about your past. The reason you were rejected, the reason you were cast aside. It is connected to this threat." Ilara's heart raced. She had always believed her rejection was a mistake, an unfair decision by those who should have protected her. But now she realized it might have been orchestrated, part of a larger plan she could not yet see. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Darian's gaze softened, but there was a gravity in his eyes that made her chest tighten. "Your rejection was not random. Someone wanted you out of the way, to place you exactly where you are now, and they underestimated your strength and my willingness to protect you." Ilara felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. The thought that her life had been manipulated, that her suffering had been deliberate, made her blood boil. Yet beneath it all, a strange determination grew. She would not be a pawn. She would not be a victim. Together they prepared. Darian guided her through the estate, showing her hidden passages, safe rooms, and ways to move silently through the halls. They trained with focus and intensity, each movement precise, each lesson sharpening both their skills and their bond. "You are stronger than you realize," Darian said as they moved through a series of exercises. "And the bond between us. It gives a strength we cannot find alone. You must trust it even when it is difficult." Ilara nodded, feeling the truth in his words. Every time their hands brushed, every time their eyes met, she felt a surge of power she could not explain. It was not just physical, It was emotional, mental, a connection that tied them together in ways that went beyond logic. Night fell, and the estate was cloaked in shadows. Ilara stood by the window, watching the city below, aware of every subtle shift in the air, every faint sound in the distance. She had learned to sense danger, to anticipate it, to prepare for it, and yet nothing could fully prepare her for what was about to happen. A sudden noise echoed through the hall, a soft, almost imperceptible movement. Darian was instantly at her side, his presence grounding her. "Stay close," he whispered. "They are here." Shadows moved in the corners of the room, figures cloaked in darkness, their intentions hidden but clear. Ilara's pulse quickened, but she did not panic. She had trained, learned, and grown stronger. She could face this. The figures approached, and Darian stepped forward, his posture commanding, his presence a shield between Ilara and the threat. "You will not harm her," he said, his voice cold, sharp like steel. One of the figures stepped forward, a hooded figure whose eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You underestimate us, Darian," the figure said. "The Omega belongs to power, and we will take what is ours." Ilara felt a surge of fear, but it was tempered by determination. She took a step forward, her hand glowing faintly with energy she did not fully understand but had learned to control. "She is not yours," she said, her voice steady, firm. "And we will not let you take her." The figures hesitated, surprised by her courage and the bond between her and Darian. In that moment, the power between them surged, invisible but undeniable, a force that made the intruders falter. Darian moved closer to Ilara, his hand brushing hers, grounding her, connecting their energy. Together they created a barrier, a shield of strength and trust that the figures could not penetrate. The room pulsed with power, the air thick with energy that made the walls tremble. The figures retreated, hissing threats that promised they would return. Darian and Ilara stood together, breathing heavily, the bond between them stronger than ever. "You see," Darian said, his voice low but calm. "Together we are stronger. Alone we are vulnerable, but together, nothing can touch us unless we allow it." Ilara nodded, her chest still pounding. She had faced danger, felt fear, and yet she had survived. More than that, she had learned the depth of her own strength, and the strength of the bond she shared with Darian. As they prepared for the night, Darian led her to a small room filled with ancient books, scrolls, and artifacts. "There is more you need to know," he said. "About your past, about the prophecy, about why you were rejected." Ilara listened, her eyes wide as he explained that her bloodline was significant, connected to an ancient prophecy that spoke of an Omega who would stand beside a powerful Alpha to break a curse and change the balance of power in the city. Her rejection, the hardship she had endured, had been part of a plan to place her exactly where she needed to be when the time came. "I was placed here for a reason," Ilara whispered, her voice trembling. "All those years. They were not wasted?" "No," Darian said softly, moving closer. "They were preparation. And now the time has come. But the challenge will not be easy. The forces against us are strong, and they will not hesitate to destroy anyone who stands in our way." Ilara felt a surge of determination. She would face whatever came, not just for herself, but for Darian, for their bond, and for the future they were destined to protect. Night deepened, and the estate settled into quiet. But both of them remained alert. Shadows moved outside, silent observers waiting for the right moment to strike. Ilara and Darian knew that the coming days would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. And yet, even in the midst of uncertainty and danger, there was a quiet intimacy between them. They had faced fear together, trained together, and shared moments of trust that neither had expected. The bond between them was no longer just about survival. It was about connection, about understanding, about courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Darian's hand brushed hers, a subtle reminder of the trust and strength they shared. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin the next phase. We uncover the truth about those who manipulate your past and seek to control our future, and we face them together." Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but also the warmth of the bond that connected her to Darian. She was no longer alone, no longer weak, no longer rejected. She was part of something greater, something powerful, something that would shape the destiny of them both. And as the night stretched on, filled with quiet preparation and unspoken promises, a shadow moved through the city outside the estate. Eyes watched, waiting, calculating. aware that the bond between Alpha and Omega had grown, and that the coming storm would test everything they had built, everything they had learned, and everything they had come to feel for each other. Cliffhanger. Ilara learns the truth about her bloodline and prophecy. But shadowy forces are still watching, preparing to strike. The audience is left wondering, who is manipulating her past? And will their bond be enough to survive the storm that is coming? Dawn broke over the city with a soft golden light, but inside Darian's estate the air was thick with tension. Ilara stood beside him, her heart pounding, her mind alert. The shadows from the previous nights had grown bolder. Those who had watched and waited were now moving, and the time for preparation was over. Darian's hand brushed hers, a silent reassurance. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice calm but heavy with the weight of what was to come. Ilara nodded, feeling the warmth of the pendant against her chest. She had trained, learned, and faced fear. She had discovered the truth about her past and her bloodline, and now she knew her strength, and the strength of their bond. "I am," she said, her voice steady. "Whatever comes, we face it together." A shadow shifted in the corner of the hall, and the tension in the room snapped like a taut rope. Figures emerged from the darkness, masked, cloaked, their movements precise, their intent clear. They had come for the bond, for the power that Darian and Ilara shared, and for control over a destiny that was not theirs to claim. Darian stepped in front of Ilara, his posture protective and commanding. "You will not take her," he said, his voice echoing with authority. "Not today. Not ever." Ilara's hand glowed faintly as she touched the pendant, and a wave of energy pulsed through the room. It was not just protection. It was a connection, a bond of trust and courage that linked her and Darian in a force invisible, yet undeniable. The intruders faltered for a moment, surprised by the power they had underestimated. One of the figures stepped forward, hooded and shadowed. "You cannot stop us," the figure hissed. "Your bond is strong, but it is not enough." Darian's eyes narrowed. "Strength is not measured by force alone," he said. "It is measured by courage, by trust, and by the willingness to protect what matters most." Ilara moved beside him, her voice firm. "We will not let you win. This bond is ours, and it is stronger than you think." The intruders lunged, but the combined force of Darian's presence and Ilara's energy met them. The room pulsed with light and power, shadows twisting and recoiling at the unyielding strength of their connection. Every strike, every movement was precise, a dance of trust and skill. During the confrontation, Ilara felt the bond between them grow stronger. She sensed his intentions, his movements, and he sensed hers. It was a connection beyond words, a synchronization that allowed them to anticipate and counter every move. They were not just fighting. They were a single force united against the darkness. One of the intruders tried to strike from behind, but Darian intercepted, his movements fluid, protective. Ilara stepped forward, her energy flaring, and the intruder was thrown back, stunned by the power of their combined will. "Enough," Darian shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Leave now and never return." The remaining intruders hesitated. They had underestimated the bond, the courage, and the strength that flowed between Alpha and Omega. One by one, they retreated into the shadows, leaving only silence behind. Ilara's chest heaved, but she stood tall, the warmth of the pendant steady against her heart. She looked at Darian, and for the first time, there were no walls, no fear, only trust and understanding. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "No," Darian said softly, his hand brushing hers. "We did it together." The aftermath was quiet, but the weight of the moment lingered. They had faced danger and emerged victorious. Not because of individual strength, but because of the bond they shared. Ilara realized that everything, her rejection, her hardships, her discoveries, had led her to this moment, to this partnership, to this trust that could withstand even the darkest threats. Later, as the city settled into night, Darian led Ilara to the rooftop of the estate. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and the city below seemed peaceful, unaware of the danger that had threatened them. "You have changed everything," Darian said, his voice low, almost reverent. "Your courage, your strength, your heart. It has made this bond possible, and it has made us stronger than we ever imagined." Ilara gazed at him, feeling the depth of connection that went beyond words. "And you?" she asked softly. Have you changed too? Darian's eyes met hers. Steady and full of emotion he rarely displayed. Yes, he said. Because of you. Because of what we share. You have shown me that trust is not weakness and that connection is not a curse. It is a gift. Elara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and something she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. Peace. The past, with all its pain and rejection, had led her here, and now she was not just accepted, she was needed, seen, and valued. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of the city and the faint whisper of wind through the rooftops. Darian reached for her hand and she allowed him to take it. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of everything they had faced, everything they had survived, and everything they had yet to discover. There is more ahead, he said, his voice quiet but steady. More challenges, more threats, more choices. But whatever comes, we face it as one. Do you understand? Elara nodded, the pendant glowing faintly against her chest, a symbol of both protection and connection. I understand. And I am ready. For whatever comes, I am with you. Darian's gaze softened, and for the first time he allowed himself a small, genuine smile. Then we are stronger than anything that stands against us. Together. They stood there side by side, looking out over the city, the night stretching endlessly before them. The bond between Alpha and Omega had been tested, challenged, and strengthened. They had faced shadows, danger, and the weight of destiny, and they had emerged stronger, united, and unbroken. In that moment, Elara understood something profound. Rejection had not defined her. Fear had not controlled her. The past had not trapped her. She had discovered her strength, embraced her purpose, and forged a bond that no darkness could sever. And as the stars sparkled above, she knew that whatever the future held, whatever threats, challenges, or mysteries, the bond they shared would endure. It was a bond of trust, courage, and unspoken understanding. A bond forged through trials and tempered in fire, and in that bond they found not just power but hope. Not just survival but connection. Not just a shared destiny but a shared heart. For Elara and Darian the storm had passed, but the horizon remained wide and open. And together they would face whatever came next as one, unbroken and unstoppable. Cliffhanger Resolution. The immediate threat has been defeated, but Elara and Darian now fully understand the power and significance of their bond. The audience is left with a sense of triumph, emotional fulfillment, and hope, while the larger world and future adventures remain open, keeping the story epic and myth-like.